Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to yet another edition of Democratic View. I'm the hostess. My name is Phyllis Italiano. Been doing this show a long, long time. And with me today, I have a gentleman I would say that I really do have a great deal of respect for. He's a leader of the best kind. His name is Jeff Bragman, and he's a former councilman and an attorney. And he feels about this area the way I feel about this area. He loves it.
Hello, Phyllis. It's good to see you again. Yes, I do. I think of you every time the weather is cool because I know you're going to be in the bay swimming, doing your swimming.
You know, I'm counting the days.
I'm sure you are.
I mean, April 1st is today, and then I'm usually jumping in the water by the 15th of April.
She's got a calendar.
I'm
And
gonna
no
see-
wetsuit. There's never a wetsuit.
Never a wetsuit. Never. I'm going to see if I'm going to be able to do it this year.
I think it's what keeps you young and active.
Oh, I do love the bay. I will say that.
Yeah,
It's
well,
my favorite.
We all love the bays, the ocean, the waters, the beaches, the wetlands. That's what it's that. I like to remind myself and others that that's really what it's all about here. It's not. It's actually not about the big houses or the big parties or the excitement or the fancy restaurants. It's about the natural beauty of the place.
It certainly is. I couldn't agree with you more. I know that sometimes when I am driving down, and I usually go 3 Mile Harbor because I like the curves. I know they slow people down a little bit, I hope. And when I look past at water and views, and if there's a deer that's going by me, I really think, boy, am I lucky. And every once in a while, out of Camp Blue Bay, there will be turkeys, wild turkeys on the
Flocks of wild turkey.
and then I say, oh, I'm going to have to tell my nephew in California about this, you know.
Well, not long ago, for the first time, I confess, I saw a bald eagle in flight, which is pretty exciting.
Yes,
They're,
I have seen that.
No matter how many pictures you've seen, when you see these birds, taking off, and I got to see it sort of doing a low takeoff. It was just unbelievable.
Well, where I swim in the cove, there's used to be, I don't know if it's still there, I haven't been there let this year, but there used to be this platform where they would sometimes come.
They're pretty majestic.
Oh my God. I will tell you that sometimes, many times, when I am in Maidstone Park particularly, I am in awe of the views that I see.
It's funny, I remember Maidstone Park from when my son was in Little League back in the day,
Yes.
when they were little. And we, played some games up there. And I remember, getting out of the car going, this has got to be the most beautiful place to have a Little League game. It was just it was like a Currier and Ives,
Yes.
print. It was so beautiful.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, not to go dark, but that was the site proposed by the town board to put a temporary cell tower, which I'm happy that they backed away from. I thought it was very poor judgment at the time. They were talking about wheeling in a nice 100-foot tall tower in Maidstone Park. It was like, no, it's not really a good idea to put it in a public park. Sometimes I do look around I do love all those views, especially the ones where you can get water on two sides of you. There's so many of those, or farm fields against the water, something, unique. That kind of reminds me that we should have the same rule that doctors have when they treat you. They say the first rule of medicine is first, do no harm. And I think that should be the rule about how we deal with development and issues out in East Hampton is leave it alone. Like let's understand that we have to preserve the beauty that we have here.
Oh, I love that, Jeff. That's do no harm.
Yeah, there's
That's
a
a great
tendency,
word.
I think, to these days, especially with we have tremendous wealth coming in, and there's a tendency to think that anything that can be done should be done. shows in some of the large houses that have all the bells and whistles, but I don't know, there's just a tendency to sort of try to dress up everything, and I'm getting a little worried about it.
Getting a little worried.
I'm getting a lot worried.
A lot worried.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that where I live in Clearwater Beach, I saw a house going up, and I thought it was so out of place. It was so huge, and you say, what is this about?
Well, house size is something that we have, not addressed in years. And our code really needs revision. We need to impose some restraint on house sizes. I'm not saying it would solve all the problems, but probably know that in Amagansett, the folks who live on the lanes have just slowly watched the lanes turn from what they used to be into the latest site for, I don't want to call them McMansions, but oversized houses that occupy really a large portion of the lots that used to have open lawns, where kids could, skip from house to house. I know the lanes because at one point, many years ago, when I moved out here, I rented a house on Meeting House Lane, and it was kind of a Leave It to Beaver neighborhood. It was really sort of modest size houses, open lawns, everybody set back.
Yes.
I think, those days when gracious lawns and, spacing that took into account your neighbors were important, have been sort of overtaken by, I need my media room, I need my meditation room, I need my whatever the latest, bells and whistles are that,
Media room.
It's,
holy mackerel.
Yeah, and what I try to keep in mind is that, people come out here, I think they come out here for the simplicity of the place. The overwhelming, physical beauty of it is so inspiring. I mean, that's what it's about. I was also concerned during the time I was on the town board with the extent to which we have commercialized our beaches, our public beaches. Because it's gotten to the point on weekends on the larger beaches that, you've got dueling catered parties going on with tablecloths and, prep tables and gone are the days of like where you carry in, some seafood on your own and sit down on blankets with your friends, or, God forbid, let a dog run around on the beach at night. And we really, have this, this routine that's accepted that we can have these large catered parties, and they've expanded over the years. They're getting bigger and bigger. I mean, we had some last season when I was in office. I remember there was like a party. I believe it was about 125 people that were on the beach, and it was one of these parties that expanded once it started. And I don't know many other places that have the kind of beauty that we have that permit that. And I'd like to see it stop. I think one of the things that would, I think it's important to look at some of the larger issues that might help calm the area down. And one of them would be if we had quiet beaches at night. And I know that a lot of folks who may listen to this have, sons, daughters, friends, brothers who work in catering. And, I certainly don't want, I'm not saying that people can't do catering and do well at catering, but I think it'd be a better idea to have these catered clam bakes at their houses in their backyards, which is, where you throw parties, and leave the beaches open so that, if I want to go out to the beach with, a group of friends and just informally sit and, enjoy the sunset and let a dog run around without worrying he's going to kick sand into some elegant cocktail party. I think that would be, a little gesture that might make the town, might convey to people who live here that this is what we want. This is the mood that we want. And I sometimes wish I saw more big picture ideas coming out of the town board on that level. Instead, everybody says, well, yes, this is the busiest year we've ever had. Yes, the traffic is horrible. what's the answer? And, the answer is often just, well, this is what it is. You have to accept it, and we'll do the best we can.
But that's not the answer.
It's not. I think in some ways we have to, sort of, grab a hold of these issues and decide what kind of town we want to be. And I don't think that's the kind of thinking and discussing that the town board likes to do, because it's controversial. And, the minute you have an idea like the beaches are too commercial, you're going to have people come in and say, well, I give surf lessons at the beach. And I do think there's a difference between those kind of uses that are water dependent, like teaching kids how to surf. I understand that there's a place for that at the beach, but I think it should be limited and controlled. But at nighttime on the beaches, I don't think it's a great idea to have them be catering venues. I mean, why do that? And in fact, a lot of the caterers, not all of the caterers, but a lot of them aren't even East Hampton businesses. A couple are, but not most of them are not. And as I said, if kids or people working second jobs do catering, and I have good friends who've done that for years, we don't need to commercialize our beaches to let them have that opportunity. So I'd like to see more. I would hope to see more of this kind of discussion in work sessions on the town board. Unfortunately, though, the town board work sessions are usually narrowly focused, and they're usually they've pre-decided what they're going to consider. So there's not a lot of long-range thinking. And, I'm hoping actually, one thing that encourages me is we have a new director of planning, Jeremy Samuelson.
I know Jeremy.
And
well,
a very good guy.
Yes.
I know Jeremy. I don't want to date myself, but I believe that I was present for the first meeting that Jeremy ever stood up at and spoke at, and he was very new. Well, he's not.
You mean the one where he was talking to about electrical stuff?
I don't remember.
Oh, I remember that meeting.
I don't remember that, but
he was incredible.
But Jeremy, back in the day, Jeremy's been around for years,
yes,
and I've watched him grow. And he's exactly the kind of guy we need to head up the planning department. And he is, I think, a big picture thinker. I just, hope that the town board, it's not, my experience with the town board is that it's not usually their first reaction to bring the planning department in. And I think that's I think it's important to do that. Like when you're considering planning changes in the town, to bring them in right away. Those are our planning professionals. We should use them. And
that's why we have them.
Yeah, I think the town board sometimes thinks, well, we're the town board, we're elected, we should know the direction, and this is what we're going to do. So we'll give this to the planning department instead of bringing them in for the long range planning. The airport, I think, suffered a little bit about that. There was, I think, less discussion than many people wanted to see about what the possible alternatives were to the airport. And, I was deeply involved in that re-envisioning process. And I do think that there were some preliminary issues that had to be decided. The big issue is, is the status quo okay? If it's not, what are our options? So that really was the big first question. But I'm not sure that the town board wanted to really look at that site as a blank slate, and say, let's just think for a minute about what that airport could be if it weren't an airport. That seemed to be a non-starter. And I'm afraid that what we're seeing, or what we're going to see, is a less than assertive enough response to the problems that we've had over the last 20 years. It seems, from what I've been following it, following the town board meetings a bit, it seems like the solution is sort of modest. They're talking about curfews, which don't solve the problem. And I think their boldest idea was that for commercial operators, they would only allow one trip in and one trip out per aircraft. But, for a company like Blade,
Yeah.
I don't think that's really going to be a problem for them to overcome, because if the demand is there for more flights, I think they're just going to go into the market. That Blade doesn't own its own equipment. They use other companies' equipment. They just do the scheduling.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's how they came into business. They're an app, basically. They don't own their planes. But if there's high demand for people to come in and out of East Hampton, they're just going to access the market and bring in more equipment. So I'm not sure I see that as a successful control over the quantity, the volume of traffic, and that's the key to making the airport compatible with this beautiful, quiet town that we have. The key is diminishing the number of aircraft coming in and out.
That's also about air quality. We have the worst air quality in all of New York State in Suffolk County.
The numbers are pretty shocking from the airport. I was surprised as a town board member when I saw the data. The data, are very bad. They really show some pretty serious impacts.
Yeah.
The other thing that remains a concern, I think, is that airport is sitting on one of our most important aquifers. And
That's the other issue, which I
for
must say.
for us,
I mean, how many times have I said on this show, when you can't drink the water, what you have is nothing.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line here.
I summed that up as water is life. It really is. Water is life in East Hampton. And that part of that property shelters a deeper aquifer, which we don't have access to in all other locations. The Magathi, it's called. And it's if that gets contaminated, we're in really bad shape. And we've got a fuel farm sitting on that property that has tens of thousands of gallons of fuel. And it's up to date and it has its safety measures, but we all know things happen in this world. And I just thought, that I'm surprised that no one could bring that issue up and say, even if we continue the airport, we don't have to continue fueling aircraft. And I mean, I may be cynical, but the proprietor of the business that sells that fuel was a contributor to some of the political campaigns of the last season. And the town makes some money on it, but not a huge amount of money. But that, to me, that's an issue where if we really looked at, what's good for us for the future, the decision might have been, look, no matter what we do in the airport, even if we continue with commercial traffic and whatever, maybe we should get rid of that huge fuel farm there, which is really a catastrophe possibly waiting to happen. So that's what I mean by looking at the larger issues. It's I think part of it, frankly, is that the pace of town government is fairly quick. People's attention span, unfortunately, is very short. Issues come up, they blow up in the newspapers. They're big for about a week or two, and then everybody forgets about them. And then another issue that I've been following and hoping that the town board actually sits up and does something is to preserve this artist studio located in Springs on the property everybody calls Brooks Park. That's James Brooks and Charlotte Park, who were both abstract expressionist artists, and everybody is throwing up their hands saying, oh, we can't save these buildings. It's millions of dollars. Can't do it. I mean,
and where is it located so that people can...
It's off Neck Path. It's in the Neck Path area, I believe. I've been there fairly recently, and the buildings they're in decent shape. They're intact, and they're not as well protected as they should be, but the buildings it's a little hard to find, actually. You got to look for it. But the Brooks Studio is a really important historic building. I mean, I personally spoke to officials from the National Trust who were as emphatic as they could be that they want that building on the National Register of Historic Places. And what most folks don't know is It's only 1,300 square feet. It's tiny.
Wow.
It's a tiny building. And James Brooks and Charlotte Park lived kind of off the land, a little bit off the grid, not totally, but they were very basic in their needs. So the building was constructed out of very simple materials. It was ever, they were artists. They were not, millionaires.
Yeah.
But when you read about what Brooks did to site the studio, he wanted to know the exact coordinates of true north, not magnetic north. He wanted true north so that he could adjust there's a window, a very unusual window in the building that extends the width of the building, and he wanted to be sure that the daylight came into that room evenly. And so he produced this little studio, only 1,300 square feet. It's like a shed today, and it has sort of this sawtooth design. It's a very unusual looking building, and publicly the town board, especially the supervisor, has been like, oh, we're going to save it. But lately the smoke signals are, oh, it's too expensive. Meanwhile, we declared it a landmark. The town declared it a landmark and later committed in a town board resolution to spend $850,000 of CPF money to restore it to its historic, condition. And now all of a sudden, oh, it's too expensive. And it's like a 1,300 square foot building is too expensive. And oh, we can't. What kind of a plan could we have for it? And my suggestion would be open the site up on weekends in the summer for 2 days a week. Restore the little studio, the 1,300 square foot studio, let people see it, and that's it for the moment. And then there are other buildings that don't have to be restored. They can be renovated. They're not as historic as that studio. But, the studio itself, this unusual shaped building, really gives definition to the landscape. I mean, what a tragedy if a landmark, a town landmark that we declared is torn down. And I was so frustrated, and I say particularly with the supervisor, that I was talking to some officials about how to do a public-private partnership so we could engage private funding. And it is possible to do that. And Fred Thiel wrote a letter to the town board and said, if you can't tear this building down, it violates the conditions under which you purchased it and landmarked it. You can't destroy a landmark. So that's another issue where it's like, is it really that hard to come up with the money and restore a 1,300 square foot building that's made out of plywood and other basic material, even if it has to be replaced stick by stick? The shape of the building and its location are important. So that's and it's a real connection to the past that gives this town the flavor and the interest that it has. And it reminds us that the reason these folks came out here, it wasn't for the party scene, although they partied amongst themselves, certainly, but they came out here because it was so beautiful. And they were
the light.
And the light. And they were escaping the city and the James Brooks studio. When you see it, and you can go see it now, it exists, you'll see that it's turned on the land in a way and has a window across the top in an unusual location so that it would cast the light down evenly. So, I mean, I don't see why we can't just make up our mind. We're going to do it and get it done. I'd like to see that done.
I agree.
Well, I think, and there's some people that said, oh, well, we preserved Duck Creek just, down the road a piece and, so what? And it's like, well, it's not either or. It's not we preserve this one, but we don't preserve that one. I mean, this is a building that should be on the National Register of Historic Places. And it'll be a tragedy if instead of having this beautiful little studio intact and recreated or, preserved historically, that all we have is a plaque on the ground that goes, well, there used to be the studio here.
Oh my goodness.
But you have to care. You just have to care enough. And people,
Well, you also have to have values.
Well, there's that. Yes, you do. And I think, it's not just, being, high-toned and you like abstract art. This is really a part of the the culture, the foundation, the cultural foundation that makes the area what it is. It's, these folks, everybody knows Jackson Pollock and Lee Krasner, but these guys were part of it. And, they used to party. I don't know if you knew Jeffrey Potter, Joe Potter's
I
father.
do.
Yeah,
I did. I know Joe very well, Joe Potter, but I did meet his father once.
well, I don't want to date myself because I knew his father pretty well, and we were kind of friendly. And Joe posted a picture on the internet of James Brooks and I forget and another extremely famous abstract expressionist, Franz Klein, who's got a million paintings in the Metropolitan Museum. And I forget who, there was another artist there, and I don't know who it was, but he posted a picture like this was like a party that Jeffrey and the family hosted, and it's got these, 3 or 4 major artists just hanging out, enjoying the sunset together. I mean, this is big stuff, and it makes it, it actually, it's something we should talk about because it's a better draw than the party scene in Montauk, or what the latest benefit is. I mean, thinking about these great, talented, wacky kind of people that had, this is back in the late 1940s and early 50s, and they're painting these wild canvases.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, and you know what? We'll continue this on at another time.
I'm
Thanks for
sorry I
coming.
talked on and on.
That's all
about the
right. That's
art.
okay. That's
Good
all
to
right.
see you.
It's fine to have an issue like art. Art is important in this world.
Art is long. Life is short. Art is long.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Thank you for inviting me back, Phyllis. We'll do it again.
Yes, indeed. You know that.